well, Malcolm Sutherland. I do mostly animated film, but a bit of illustration. I think the original idea was to make like an animated Rorschach test. Are you familiar with Rorschach test? It's like where they take a blob of ink and put it on paper and squish it in half, and they show you the ink blob and you say, oh, that looks like a pair of breasts, and then they, psychoanalyze you or whatever. So I kind of wanted to make an animated version of that would also include the sound, so that when someone was watching it, it would basically like be this ongoing experience where they're trying to figure out what they're experiencing, and their mind would be making up a story and then having it dissolve again, and just basically an experiment to try and get that experience for the audience. I don't know, I'm inspired a lot by just like, I know it sounds ridiculously simple, but like the texture of life, like looking at like the texture of leaves and bark of like clouds. I mean, they all seem to have that quality of like when you look at them, if you look at them for any length of time, your mind starts to create images, and that's just insane. It's like, where does that come from? It's just like, it's totally a mystery, So I think it kind of comes from that fascination too, but I guess also, yeah, some more from the Rorschach test kind of is a bit more like, makes more sense. As in animation, there's the sound is this whole other dimension. So like, not only do you have the picture that can kind of create that experience, but the sound and the image together kind of form this whole new thing. And I don't know, that's pretty unique to animation. Like, I couldn't really have done the same sort of thing in a comic book. Although I have a friend who just made a comic book, and at the bottom of every page he's writing like the name of the track and the CD that you should be listening to while you read that page. So maybe I'm just, hung up on animation. Well, in this film it was like the whole process of making it was a big experiment, and so from the beginning one of the things I wanted to do was to try and design the production of the film in a way that the sound and the image would be created together and that they could affect one another. My idea was basically to like do a jam, like when musicians just get together and play, but to kind of do that where with the sound and the picture. So I would do a little piece of animation and then give it to the musician, and he would do some sound to that and give it back to me, and then I would animate something based on the sound that he'd give him back to me, and to kind of bounce it back and forth several times to kind of let the film go in a direction that I couldn't imagine at the beginning, to like give it a life of its own. So that was kind of like something I was conscious from the beginning. Like I kind of tried to design it into the whole process. And like it kind of worked and it kind of didn't, like some things really worked. Like I know things I wouldn't do for the next film, and I know things I would do. But I mean, that was the whole idea, was to kind of just have fun.
Did you make it?
Yeah, it was fun and it was hard. Like you said, animation is just like an insane amount of work. Just like, there's totally weeks where I'm just like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I'm like, I'm drawing the same thing over and over and over again with like, half a millimeter of difference between each picture. Like, I must have been dropped on my head as a baby to be doing this. But, then there's weeks where it's like, whoa, this is the coolest thing in the universe. So, in the same way that I wanted to kind of experiment with the sound in the picture going off in its own direction, I kind of wanted to do that with the visuals too. It started off basically with drawing. And one of the techniques that I thought of from the beginning that was an attempt to try and get the revelation of like something real behind abstract shapes, so that when there's like just these abstract shapes moving on the screen, that there would be this hint of that they were combining, momentarily to form something, kind of like when, like I said, like when you're watching a cloud and you're like, suddenly you're like, oh, there's a dragon. I wanted to have that in these abstract shapes. So to try and do that, I didn't really know what I was doing, but just to try something, I took like a bunch of abstract drawings and referenced the motion of the abstract shapes from live action footage. So I would go out and like, shoot video of like someone walking down the street, or, a glass dropping and breaking, just like interesting motion, and then I would put it behind my abstract shapes and then take pieces of the animation that I had done and kind of have the motion inspired by the video footage that I shot. So that was like the first kind of technique experiment that I did. And then after that, I got into another way I thought that might be interesting. And it was all kind of inspired by the sound. Each time there was like a new thing I wanted to try. It was kind of coming from what Luigi, the composer, was doing in the sound. So the next thing I tried was to project the animation onto real objects. Like to take all this animation that I'd done and use a digital projector and like just project it frame by frame onto like real objects and then animate those objects. Because I felt like it was another way that like something could come out of the image that like you totally wouldn't be expecting, you know? You'd be like, what? Now there's this, you know, this whole other layer of stuff coming out. And then from there, the last sort of like major technique that I tried was to build a flexible movie screen. It was like this big membrane in my apartment. I have a double room, and I built this like fabric membrane in between the two rooms and then projected animation onto it frame by frame, and then went behind the screen and like pushed into it. So I would just like, you know, I'd grab all these like anything I could get my hands on, you know, like the vacuum cleaner, like a chair, dishes, and just like push it in and do it all frame by frame. Because when you like are watching it, like the end result basically was that there was these kind of flat looking objects, and then every once in a while like something just like totally three-dimensional just like, you know, pushes through it and out. And I don't know, like it kind of worked and it kind of didn't in the end, you know, but it was just like, it was kind of just a fun experiment. I mean, for me, it was really about like making it, you know, like going through all those things I went through to like actually get to the finished film was kind of like, that was it, you know, that was the fun. So I mean, yeah, if it plays at festivals, it's great. Like if people like it, it's great. I mean, it's kind of just one of those films that like, it just is what it is, you know, and like some parts work and some parts don't, and like sometimes I watch it and I hate it, you know? Really? Yeah, and then other times I watch it and I'm like, whoa, that was cool. So, I don't know.
So what the process bring to you, you know? What does it bring to you?
Basically, because if I do anything else, I'll go crazy. You know, like, there was like a point in my life, like, I don't know, maybe like 8 years ago where I was, like, I used to build kitchens for a living, and I don't know, just something snapped, you know? I was just like, I want to, like, make stuff. Like, I want to, you know, I have things that I have to put into the world. And, like, if I'm not, like, doing that 100%, if I'm not doing that all the time, it's like I'm not really living, you know? So, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm not going to get rich, you know? I probably won't ever be famous. It's just like, I don't want to go crazy.
That's a good point.
And, you know, I totally appreciate how ironic it is that, like, you know, I'm crazy. Like, you know, like, you know, when I try and explain, like, what I went through making this film, it's like, man, were you on drugs the whole time? Or, like, what the hell? I'm like, yeah, I know, it's insane, but, yeah, that's life. Now I'm working on a film that was commissioned by an arts organization in Mexico. Apparently next year is the International Year of Astronomy, so there's this like Mexican cultural festival that commissioned a film on astronomy for me. Yeah, it's totally fun. Their instructions were like, basically as long as it has something to do with astronomy, so, you know, I can just go to town again.